My speech with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Actually, I am standing vividly right in front of you as a representative of my good friend, Dr. Jamil Muhammad Sadis. This morning, I received a gracious call from him telling me that he may not be able to attend this event for understandable reasons. And this is a call that I have to gladly oblige to. It is something that I will not fail to show up because of the strong bond between me and this great friend of mine, Muhammad Jamil Sadis. But when I came, I found that the occasion is more than I expected, far beyond my expectation, because it is rewarding, entertaining, educative, inspirational, motivational, to say the least. So Alhamdulillah, I ask Allah the Almighty to continue showering His blessings in this event. But let me just quickly start by reminding us that Ahlul Qur'an, anything related to the Qur'an, it has to be conservative when it comes to timing. We have to be conservative with our time. If it is a conference on psychology, for example, or on anything related to education or engineering, you can go to any length to talk as you wish, as you so wish, okay? But if anything is related to the Quran, our time is, we are more than conservative, in fact, with our time. So let us just make a note of this fact. For subsequent events, we have to respect time. For some of you who lived in the West, you know how they appreciate time, how they respect it. They don't really go beyond anything, beyond the schedule, for whatever reason. Actually, I was invited, like I said, on behalf of Jamil Muhammad Sadis, to talk on 3 things, but concisely. Number 1, to talk on the comprehensiveness of the Quran and the best way to approach the reading of the Quran. Quran as a comprehensive manual of our life. So how can we engage? How can we make best out of the Quran? We are trained as Ahlul Quran to always learn from others and never cease trying to be the best we could be. And this is the moment. Our moment is now. We have to take every single opportunity and blend it to our advantage. Okay? So the past speaker, our great scholar, Professor Salih Sheikh, had demonstrated extraordinary sample of how Quran can be engaged with comprehensively. Okay, why? Because of the challenges we found ourselves in many ways. Number 1, we are living in a country bedeviled with wide range of challenges, ranging from a wide range of criminality, rampant insurgency, banditry, massive corruption virtually at all levels. This is a combination of failure which literally drags every system down. So there is no better time than now to reconnect with the Quran and translate it into reality, align our lives with the Quran in the best way possible. This is the best time to do that. Number 2, we are few days away from the general election. As you know, that election comes with surprises. So we have to force our reading into the Quran to extract the best qualities of leaders we are looking for. What are the criteria set for the best leaders we can have using our strong ammunition, literally our votes? And is it a time? This is an important and serious question that we have to ask ourselves honestly. Is it time for us to revise the screening process of electorates? What is the best way of electioneering in the campaign? What is the best way to come up with the modalities when it comes to creating a strong and formidable manifesto? Many of our aspirants, they don't practically have a constructive manifesto. That is why they're just coming out of the blue. And when they are given offices, they'll just start giving us surprises. They'll fall below expectation. So this is the best time to reunite with the Quran to see how can we address all these issues. Number 3, we will quickly look into some of the ethical aspects of best way to use to memorize the Quran. What are the modalities, the ethics we can possibly use to retain the Quran? It is not about memorizing the Quran. Memorization is just part of the game. But what is more important, I will tell you, is to retain the Quran. Every one of us can memorize the Quran, can memorize a single verse from the Quran depending on the time, depending on the proposal you set aside, depending on the time management, depending on the planning. The principle of management says that he who fails to plan, he plans to fail. So how can we translate this into the Quran? How can we apply it with our recitation of the Quran, and how can we use that to retain the Quran with us? So let us quickly begin with the first item on the list. Quran is a comprehensive guide, and literally it is a manual. The issue is far beyond recitation of the Quran. Recitation is part of it. It's good to recite the Quran. الذين آتيناهم الكتاب يتلونه حق تلاوته أولئك يؤمنون به. التلاوة means memorization, recitation of the Quran using sound which is compatible with its nature, number 1. But retaining the Quran, translating the Quran into practical action, translating it into concrete action is far more important than just mere memorization. We have seen how Islam demonstrated its compatibility with science and technology. And let me begin by strengthening this fact that Islam has never been at war with science. At no point. It has never been at war with science and technology. Number 1. Number 2, for over 1400 years, Islam has tried to, establish its relevance, its compatibility with science and technology. We saw how Prophet ﷺ, the noble prophet of Islam, in the event of, pandemic, at some point, when any one of his, companions was grievously afflicted with any disease, including pandemic, how he instructed them to stay where they were. So literally, this is an Islamic version of lockdown. The lockdown that came 2 years ago, that disrupted, that defied almost every single rule of economics. So we see how Quran established its relevance with science and technology by providing the principle of protection through it. So the protection that we can get from the Quran, or our failure to understand this, originates from our ignorance of the subject. The problem is not with the Quran, it is with its applicability, how we apply it, how we read the science into the Quran. We saw how Islam has stood as a beacon of learning for over 1400 years. To be precise, for over 1,000 years. Al-Azhar University has been a beacon of Islamic learning. How, teaching originated from that episode of learning, that edifice of learning played a significant part in sending a very strong, powerful message across the world. We saw how Islam paved the way for the Renaissance of Europe and its advancement. It was Islam that produced algebra, how it gave us a power of mastery in poetry, in algebra. We call it algorithm. It was distorted. So this is the power of Islam. But the most important thing to understand is that Qur'an was revealed to make best out of it. كتاب أنزلناه إليك مبارك ليدبروا آياته وليتذكر أولو الألباب. This Quran was revealed to you, O Prophet Muhammad. It is a blessed book, number one. Number two, it was meant to be understood, to be reflected upon, to read it deeply, critically, and analyze it, and you won't find any fault therein. So this is the power of logic contained in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at some point demonstrated how he posed a simple but a profound challenge to the people of Arabia. The people of Arabia were known to be critical when it comes to engagement with new texts. So Quran came, and at a time when they approached their climax in poetry. But that originality, the miraculous nature of the Quran, defied their originality. And gradually and systematically it posed challenge to them at various levels. At some point it says, فَأْتُوا بِعَشْرِ سُوَرٍ مِثْلِهِ مُفْتَرَيَاتٍ. When they argued that it was a paraphrasal from Bible, it was paraphrased, it was forged. Literally, put simply, the Prophet Muhammad, as they say, he had copied the content of the Quran from Bible. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now posed that formidable challenge to them, come up with Ashri Suwarin Mithlihi, 10 different verses of the same originality, of the same magnitude, of the same miracle. They failed to do that. At some point, فَأَتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ, just to bring up, put forward one chapter of the same magnitude. They failed. When they failed that, then he says, لَإِنِ اجْتَمَعَتِ الْإِنسُ وَالْجِنُّ عَلَىٰ أَن يَأْتُوا بِمِثْلِ هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ لَا يَأْتُونَ بِمِثْلِهِ لا يأتون بمثله ولو كان بعضهم لبعض ظهيرا. They will never ever come with the same thing of that magnitude. Why? Because they failed in the past, then there is no reason to believe that they will do that in the future. Am I making sense? Are you with me? And we live at a time of a great tension. Now, tension rooted in historical forces that go beyond any current policy debate. Now, Muslims, when you look at them, or when you look at the Muslim world in general, you find that it was backward, educationally, militarily, technologically, almost in every aspect. Why? Because we left the Quran. We left the Quran. The only way to restore the glory of the past is through critical reading of the Quran. This is what Muhammad al-Ghazali calls al-qira'a al-intiqa'iyya. We have to read the Quran spiritually, morally, and intellectually, by freeing it from all external forces that will impede our learning, that will impede our understanding and learning of the content of the Quran. So qira'a intiqa'iyya entails dissociating the Quran from all external influences of grammar. You will find out that most books of tafsir were deeply engaged in focusing on technicalities of grammar alone, like Abi Hayyan. Some are delved into technicalities of words, of philosophy, like Tafsir al-Kabir. Some, when you are reading them, you'll find out that you are just reading a book of fiqh, for that matter, like a book of Islamic jurisprudence. So this was the same argument advanced by Muhammad Abdu when he came in 1905. He, as you know, by the way, Muhammad Abdu was the father of Islamic modernism. Islamic monism, the concept of trying to establish the relevance of Quran with modern time, through trying to reconnect the past with the present. What do we mean by that? Trying to go back into what our predecessors left for us, what they call as-salaf. We have to read pristine Islam, that is the original version of Islam as understood by the Salaf. And we have to free ourselves from the shackles of taqleed. Taqleed, that is blind imitation or interpretation of the religious text without critical examination of the evidences found in the reading. Okay, so Muhammad Abdul tried very hard to convince the people of Egypt that what he was trying to bring to the fore had absolutely no contradiction with Islam, and in many ways, his efforts succeeded. Muhammad Abdul established relevance of Islam, established compatibility of Islam with technology, as I say, and with modern science. And after his death, his student and associate, Muhammad Rashid Rida, expounded on his teaching to produce what they call Tafsir al-Manar. Tafsir al-Manar was to become the source of tafsir and reference for anyone who wants to establish the relevance of Islam with modern science. So in the book, he showed how Islam was able to cure the disease of humanity. He argued that the cure of the disease of humanity was to be found in the Quran. But the only problem was that with our reading of the Quran, he says, in the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not ask us about whether we memorize the Quran or not. That was the simple question. But he will ask us, have we understood the guidance of the Quran? To what extent have we implemented the guidance of the Quran into our lives? This is the serious question that we may face on the day of judgment. So for that reason, he decided to reinterpret the Quran in a way that corresponds with the realities of time. Number one. Number two, he was solo to reinterpret the Quran in a way that even a layman walking on the street will understand it. So this is part of the miraculous nature of the Quran. The cure of our economic diseases was to be found in the Quran. We are just, both left and right. We are crying about the economic quagmire we found ourselves, especially in this country. If I am to ask you, who will gladly bring out 1,000 Naira bill right now? Who can do that? I don't think 10 of you can do that. Or can I challenge you to do that? How many of you can bring out 1,000 Naira bill right now? Can you? Where is it? Because we don't have money. We don't have money with us. 1,000. Can you bring it out? Yeah. You have it? And all of you? I'm sorry, I was asking because it was my belief that we don't have money with us. We have gone cashless. We are trying to go with, trying to establish to go with the digital age. But if you have it, no problem, we have gone beyond the challenge. And we have to understand that Quran is a comprehensive guide. As I say, it is a manual for humanity. And literally, what do you mean by manual? What is manual? If I'm to ask you, I'm an educationist, so at some point I may be compelled to ask you some questions because I want the session to be interactive more than that, more often than not. I want it to be an active session, not just passive. Do you understand me? So, what is manual? When we say manual, what do you mean by manual? A guide. A guide. If you go back to a dictionary, you'll see that a manual is anything that you will use to understand something. So, for example, if you go to a marketplace if you go to a marketplace and you buy, for example, you bought a mobile phone, the best, it is only right to start by going through that manual so that you will save your money, you will not fall into the trap of, losing it by misusing the manual. Okay? So you will put the Qur'an and match the same shoe. Qur'an has come to be a manual. So if we understand, based on the, having said that, if we agree that Qur'an is our manual, then why are we living it? To conduct our life, or we operate our life without going back to the Quran itself. So long we are Muslims, we believe that it is our manual. The primary principal function of manual is to be guided by its content. So now, why are we living manual and operating our lives without going back to the Quran? This is the origin of our quagmire, like I say. We have to go back to re-establish, to reconnect our understanding, our spirituality with that of the Quran, so that we will be right. If we go back to the Quran, we will see that Quran, in many ways, 5 minutes? My time has been taken by someone. I think you will respect my time by being patient with you for so long. Number one, I have waited for over 2 hours. I was called guest speaker. So guest speaker need to be given a considerable amount of time. My time was taken by someone. And I have not said anything. I'm only in the introduction for now. So, and you are telling me it is only 5 minutes. So now, let me quickly go to the ethics we must be guided with when it comes to memorization of the Quran. Number one, like I said, Quran is a kitab. Kitabun anzalnahu ilayka mubarakun. It is a blessed book, and Muslims were meant to follow it in every single detail. So how can they do that? By simply memorizing it. If someone asks you, how can I be guided by the content of the Quran? The answer is simple. Go and words and memorize the Quran. Well, many people will find themselves troubled by the magnitude or by the challenge that they get when it comes to memorization of the Quran. They may find that at some point they memorize the Quran, and after some time it has disappeared into a clean air. Okay? So, what is the best remedy we can offer to you as an amana? I have managed to extract some 4 guidelines. 4. Are you with me? How many guidelines? 4 guidelines. Number one, we call them al-usus al-amma. Al-usus al-amma. That is general principles of memorization of the Quran. Speak to anyone who has memorized the Quran, and he will tell you that there are some fundamental principles which you must follow, not only to memorize the Quran, but to retain the Quran with you after memorization. Number 2, there is al-hifz. That is memorization itself. Memorization, what did I say? Al-hifz. Memorization itself. Number 3, al-muraja'. What is al-muraja'? Revision. Revision. Number 4, al-inaya bil-mushtabihat. There are some verses, for some reasons they appear problematic, okay, because of the nature of what to apply when it comes to memorize something. So we call them al-mushtabihat. A person who engages in the recitation of the Quran or memorization of the Quran has to make a note of those facts relating to al-mutashabihat. Now, let's begin with aspect number 1, al-usus al-amma. And, sorry, before al-usus al-amma, there are 4 things to bear in mind. Whenever you want to memorize the Quran, or you are a teacher, you have some students, to instill the verses of Quran in them, you will have to take a note of 4 things. Number 1, as-sin. That is the age of your student. What did I say? The age. Their age, the age group in educational psychology, the age of the recipient of your message matters. We have, primary, secondary education, or post-primary education. We have secondary education, and we have adolescent. Okay, that is the teenagers. So when it comes to memorization of the Quran, a student, he comes to you and he wants to get Quran from you through memorization. You will have to look into the age group he falls in. Okay, number one. Number two, al-hifz. That is the ability to memorize. Does he have that ability to memorize or he doesn't? If he doesn't, don't tell him goodbye and you have nothing to do with him. Number two. Number three, si'at al-waqt. That is the time frame, the availability of time, the amount of time you will invest when it comes to memorization of the Quran matters. Then al-qudra ala al-ihtimal, the durability. Is he durable? Will he, withstand the challenges coming his way? Or will he, after just some few days, run away and leave you alone? So you'll have to bear in mind that al-qudra al-ihtimal matters. Going back to al-usus al-amma, which is condition number one, there are some fundamental principles which we have to bear in mind when it comes to memorization. Number one is al-ikhlas. What did I say? Al-ikhlas. That is the purity of intention. And this goes along with salah with that, the purity of that, purity of persona, of personality. It has to be taken also into consideration. We have al-azima as-sadiqa. Al-azima as-sadiqa is a strong determination. A strong determination. Everyone will say, oh, I want to memorize the Quran. But after some days, he will run away without azima as-sadiqa. So al-azima as-sadiqa is important. Then al-tariqa al-muwaffaqa. Al-ikhlas is not enough. Al-azima as-sadiqa either is not enough. You will have to support that with al-tariqa al-muwaffaqa. There has to be an effective way, an effective modality of, that will be used in memorizing the Quran itself. Then al-muwadhaba wal-istimrar. Al-muwadhaba, that is al-muraja'a, review, constant and remarkable revision of the portion you memorized. So this is number one. We say al-usus al-amma. So under usus al-amma, we have al-ikhlas, we have salah with that, we have al-hifz, that is memorization. Under memorization, we have two categories, two items, sorry. We have al-tariqa as-sahiha, the best way possible to adopt in hifz. It is not enough just to say, I memorize. But the question is, how did you memorize? Which way did you follow in memorization? In hifz, we have two ways. طريقة الصفحة, that is to look at the page as a whole, a holistic approach when it comes to engagement with the page, to read the page from the beginning to the end. Let's assume that وَأَنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى is the beginning of the page. Then you will begin وَأَنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى وَأَنَّهُ هُوَ أَضْحَكَ وَأَبْكَى وَأَنَّهُ هُوَ أَمَاتَ وَأَحْيَا. Do you get that? Up to the end of the page. And now you will say one. Then you will begin again. وَأَنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى وَأَنَّهُ هُوَ أَضْحَكَ وَأَبْكَى. Up to the end. Then you will now say two. After some 20 versions of this repetition, then you will now say, let me try and read it off the cap. That is without preparation and without having to go back to recite it directly from the Quran. And now you will find whether you are right or wrong. Then there is tariqatul ayah al-munfarida. That is to memorize it verse by verse. Put it more literally, verse after verse. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى then you'll have to repeat it over and over again. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى. Maybe 10 times, I don't know, 20 times, 30 times. Then after some time, you'll have to pause for a moment and review the strength of what you memorized. Then we have what we call الشروط اللازمة, when there are some preconditions which have to be made before the memorization or retention of what you memorize became effective. And we have al-awamil al-musa'ida. Al-awamil al-musa'ida, things that will help you to retain what you've memorized. Quickly, let me take you along. Al-qira'ah as-sahiha, I have demonstrated that. Al-shurut al-lazima lil-hifz, we have 3 items under this. Al-qira'ah as-sahiha. We have al-hifz al-qawi, al-mateen. We have al-tasmi' 'inda al-ghayb. We have takrar al-amakin al-qariba. Al-qira'ah as-sahiha, that is when it comes to engagement with the portion you want to read for the first time. You have to make sure you understood it perfectly without any mistake. You memorize it without what? Without any mistake. Because there is a good chance that if you make a mistake, they say first impression lasts, okay? So when you make a mistake at this very first moment, there is a good chance that that mistake will be with you forever. You will remain repeating the same mistake over and over again. Do you get that? And this is insanity. Insanity, by definition, they say, is repeating something over and over again and expecting different results. And we have a hifz al-qawi al-mateen, that is a very strong way of memorization. You have to make sure that what you memorize it perfectly and holistically. At-tasmi' 'inda al-ghayb, that is, it's not enough to memorize, but you will have to leverage someone. The power of leverage, that is, use someone to your advantage. At-tasmi' 'inda al-ghayb is to call your colleague or your teacher. Sir, may I make tasmi', may I recite right in front of you so that if there is any mistake, you will alert me? This is good. Then takrar al-amakin al-qariba, what you memorize today has to be repeated maybe 10 times or 20 times. But if you go back to the portion you memorized yesterday, it has to be repeated at least 50 times. Why? Because it has gone forever. Especially for those of us who use the old technique of recitation using slate, okay, wooden slate. So whenever you wipe it, it will wipe forever. So before you wipe it, you will have to understandably make sure that you read it in such a way that it will be with you forever. Finally, we have al-wasa'il al-musa'il. Al-wasa'il, that is technique. The techniques that will help you to retain what you memorize. I have with me now al-iltizam bil-mushaf al-mu'ayyan. That is to have a standard copy of the Qur'an you will be using over and over again. It is troubling today to use small size Qur'an, pocket Qur'an. Tomorrow we'll find you using a very large copy of the Qur'an. And this way you will be zigzagging. Your mind will be troubled with wide range of pictures because you will retain the picture of the page with you. So it has to be standard, so that whenever you are reciting, you will be peeping through the pages of the Quran through your memory. Mutaba'at al-ashrita al-Qur'aniyya. Today, al-ashrita, that is cassettes, have gone. This is one of the beautiful aspects of the technology, and this establishes the relevance of the Quran with our modern technology. If you look back 50 years back, you will see that before technology comes along, there were no lights, there were no electricity, there were no mobile phone. So humanity was yearning, was looking after something that will quench their thirst for knowledge. But today, it is history. Okay, Alhamdulillah, we have all sorts of aids at our disposal that will help us to understand the message of the Quran. Not only that, that will help us to um, memorize the Quran, and by extension to retain the content of what we memorized. Reading, repetition, constant repetition, revision, al-muwadhaba, al-awrad, to have al-awrad al-yawmiyya, to set a target for memorizing the Quran, to have a sort of worry, that is spiritual or meditation or contemplation point that will be referred to every single day, day in, day out, okay? So let's assume that after Maghrib, I dedicate that first hour to investigate for revision of what I have memorized earlier in the day. Do you get that? So let's assume I memorized Hal Ataka Hadith al-Ghashiyah. So I will dedicate the time between Maghrib and Isha just to contemplate, because contemplation is a good way of retention, as they say. The daily grinds of life can sometimes have so much to bear, but the only way to fight that is by having deep contemplation. And the best way to have contemplation is using the Quran. I hope you are with me. And do not waste time chatting. Today we have the evidence of distraction is all around us. We have mobile phone, we have Facebook, we have all sort of social media distractions. We have to be attentive. Al-muraja'a al-mukathafa. We have to be, doing repetition constantly. Remarkable repetition is key. Is key to good memorization. And finally, we have al-ina'a bil-mutashabihat. That is the ayat or portions of the Quran that appears to be more or less problematic. Like, for example, if you take the qissa of Adam in Surah Al-Baqarah, you'll find that it is repeated in Surah Al-A'raf. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ وَقُلْنَا يَا آدَمُ اسْكُنْ أَنْتَ وَزَوْجُكَ الْجَنَّةَ وَكُلَا مِنْهَا رَغَدًا, to the end. If you go back to Surah Al-A'raf, you will find something similar to that. Okay? So you will have to take note of the point of similarities and the way they differ. You will have to take that into account. And take, for example, the Qissa of Surah, the narrative related to predominant narrative of Nabiullah Musa, Moses, Prophet Moses. His Qissa is widely repeated in various places, in fact, in the Quran. So you will have to understand the difference of the one in, for example, Surah Al-A'raf, and that of Surah Taha, and that of Surah Al-Shu'ara. You will have to open the Quran and go through them and try to differentiate and find a single point of identity and similarity and point of dissimilarity, for that matter, if we can put it that way. So this is a golden opportunity to revise our, spirituality and by extension religiosity. And I will end, inshallah, within the next 2 minutes. Quran, like I said, Kitabun anzalnahu ilayka mubarakun. It is a blessed book. It has come to clean our hearts, to make us pure than never before, to distract us from anything that will impede our progress, especially in the hereafter. We have to be successful. من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه ماذا؟ حياة طيبة. من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه حياة طيبة ولنجزينهم أجرهم بأحسن ما كانوا يعملون. This is the essence of what? Of revelation of the Quran. to use it as a guide, as a manual, to be guided by the example of the narratives contained therein, to stay away from corruption by reading the Qur'an. One person was arguing that corruption is in our blood. It's in our blood. I think way back in 1988, there was a university professor by the name Jason. He put forward a very strong argument about the corruption, and he related with our habits as Nigerians. It was revised over and over again, and at some point it was established to be a law of corruption. It has now been embraced as well as a standard law of corruption. He said, as far as Nigerians are concerned, when it comes to corruption, a decipher of an average Nigerian's public outcry when it comes to corruption is directly proportional to his distance from the opportunity to do exactly what he condemns. What does that mean? It means you are not corrupt only because you didn't get the opportunity to be corrupt. Me and you, if you get the same opportunity, you will do the same. Do you get that? So let us try to prove him wrong by establishing the clearness of our intention by reading the Quran, by forcing our reading into the Quran to understand that Quran is a cure, it's a remedy, it's a universal remedy that we can use to clean our heart. We ask Allah the Almighty to continue guiding us to make best out of the Quran, and in the end, I will use this gesture to thank the organizers of this event, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fervently to continue preserving them for the humanity and to continue showering His blessings upon them. By the way, we have a very strong, good MC with us, very fluent, by the way. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue showering His blessings on us. مجتمع قوم في بيت من بيوت الله ويتلون كتاب الله ويتدارسونه بينهم إلا حفتهم الرحمة. We expect Allah's blessing. So I was overwhelmed by a command. Can I put it that way? It was a command. I was directed to read something from the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا تجعلوا دعاء الرسول بينكم كدعاء بعضكم بعضا قد يعلم الله الذين يتسللون منكم لواء قد يعلم الله الذين يتسللون منكم لواء فليحذر الذين يخالفون عن أمره أن تصيبهم فليحذر الذين يخالفون عن أمره أن تصيبهم فتنة أو يصيبهم عذاب أليم أو يصيبهم قد يعلم ما أنتم عليه ويوم يرجعون إليه فينبئهم بما عملوا ويوم يرجعون إليه فينبئهم بما عملوا ويوم يرجعون إليه فينبئهم بما عملوا والله بكل شيء عليم والله بكل شيء عليم والله